All right, welcome to our 4-3 day 3 note. So make sure you have your interactive notebook out. We're going to go ahead and open to the first set of blank pages in the spiral notebook. Remember that we always take notes on the left-hand side. So at the top of the page on the left-hand side, we're going to go ahead and write 4.3, day 3. And today our goal is to solve quadratics. So solve quadratic equations and find the zeros. Okay, so go ahead and make sure you have that written at the top of your page, and then let's go ahead and go on. So let's go ahead and first let's write down the steps. So the steps, first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the quadratic equal to 0, right? The second thing we're going to do is we're going to factor, right? So that'll just be like what the steps that we followed the last 2 days. So going through and setting the parentheses, making the X puzzle, figuring out the signs, and then deciding what numbers solve that X puzzle. So it'll be factoring. And once we factor, then we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So the good thing is we actually already know how to do step 1 and step 2, and step 3 is the only new part, right? So those are our 3 steps, the exact same steps for finding the zeros too, so that's really nice. All right, so let's go ahead and look at an example. Write in blue, I don't like to write in red. I don't know why. Let's go ahead and write down r squared plus 2r equals 80. So if we follow the steps that we wrote down, step 1 was to set equal to 0. So this guy says equals 80, which is not the same thing as equals 0. So in order to make him say equals 0, we are going to minus 80 from the right side and minus 80 from the left side. Right? So then we'll go ahead and combine like terms. R squared plus 2r minus 80 equals 0. So there's our first step, set equal to 0, check. Second step, factor. So when you factor, you make 2 sets of parentheses. Make your X puzzle. If you need to make your X puzzle, there's nothing wrong with that. It just is a nice way to organize your information. So we have negative 80. We put the positive 2 down here. So I'm thinking about what 2 numbers multiply to make negative 80 and subtract to make 2. So I'm thinking of 10 and 8. All right, I know the signs have to be different since it's a negative 80. So that means I need to have a negative 8 and a positive 10, so that way they subtract to make a positive 2. So 10, negative 8. Multiply them. Yep, it makes negative 80. Subtract them, or basically add them is what we're doing. So 10 and a negative 8 makes a positive 2, so we're winners. So now in our parentheses, we're going to write r plus 10, r minus 8. So that's the factor part. The third step is to set each factor equal to 0. So this guy is the first factor, r plus 10 equals 0. This guy is the second factor, r minus 8 equals 0. And we have 2 pretty easy equations to solve. Minus 10, minus 10. R equals negative 10. Plus 8, plus 8. R equals 8. And those 2 things are our solutions. All right, last concept. So hopefully you can squeeze this in at the bottom of your page. All right, the last concept we're going to cover today is finding the zeros, which are also known as the x-intercepts. Remember that the x-intercepts are where a function touches the x-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and just write down an equation. Y equals x squared plus 5x plus 4. So that's what an equation looks like like a graph, right? Because it has the y equals part. And so what we're going to do is we're going to find the zeros of this function, which basically means we're going to find out where it touches the x-axis. So if you think of a little graph over here, this guy here is the x-axis, and the equation of his line is y equals 0. So because of that, we can replace the y with 0. Okay, so we would do that. The next step we would do is we would factor. The next step we would do would be to set each factor equal to 0, which sounds pretty familiar. Once we do that, we're going to solve. And then after that, we'll have both of our answers. So we'll have two x-intercepts. Occasionally, there'll only be one x-intercept, and that's when the vertex lies on the x-axis. And we'll talk about those tomorrow in class. All right, so let's do the example. So y equals x squared plus 5x plus 4. All right, so now, step 1, replace y with 0. Step 2, factor. You can put this equals 0 at the beginning or at the end. Once I get ready to factor, I just go ahead and write it on the right-hand side. That's the symmetric property at use. All right, so we'll make our cute little x. Put the 4 here, put the 5 here. I'm asking myself what two numbers multiply to make 4 and add to make 5. So I'm like, okay, 1 and 4. Signs are going to be the same, right? Same sign, both positive. So x plus 1, x plus 4. Separate, x plus 1 equals 0, x plus 4 equals 0. Solve. Solve the other one. So I have two x-intercepts as well as two zeros, because remember that they're the same thing. So if I was to graph this, and this is just a sketch because I didn't take the time to find out where the vertex is. So here is where x is negative 4, here is where x is negative 1, so the parabola looks something like this. And it's going through the x-axis at those two places. All right, we'll work on this some more tomorrow, do some activities in class, and you'll be ready to be a superstar.